Welcome back, everybody. It is week one of the 2025 Saints season. We are facing off against the Arizona Cardinals week one. So Kyler Murray and company comes to town. It's been a long time since we've sat here and done this, but we're back. We're ready. Saints football felt like it was so far away even yesterday. So I'm glad we're here. There's a lot of exciting things for this season, a lot of changes. Outside of Spencer Rattler being the quarterback and a couple of guys around him, it feels like this is going to be a very different team this year, a very different team going forward. So we'll see. We got Kyle joining us from the Dome Discussions podcast shortly here, so we'll get him on whenever he hops in. But we're just going to kind of start it off with the boring stuff. So, injury report. I'm sure a lot of folks saw Kyler Murray was added to the injury report for the Cardinals, but it's just an illness, and he's expected to play. So, just added, for whatever reason, probably to, you know, Sean Payton type moves, right? Add people to the injury report, send a blank injury report, whatever. He's not Sean Payton, but my point is, that's probably why he was added. So, going into the rest of the injuries, we know some guys on the Saints side of the thing. Trevor Penning, Chase Young, Jordan Howden, Christian Boyd, Trey Palmer, Xavier Truss, and Vernon Broughton are all on the injury report here. So um, nothing we didn't expect. Unfortunately, I think Chase Young was one of the late additions there that was possibly a surprise to some, but I think to most weren't. And as well, Foster Moreau and Taysom Hill are both on the player unable to perform list. So they are not active until around week five, I believe, is the designation for them. On the Cardinal side of things, like I said, Kyler Murray was on there, but um, yeah, he's playing. He's definitely playing. So, but the other one out over there was for them was the O lineman Will Hernandez, but again, not a big deal. So. Jumping into more fun stuff. Looks like we got Kyle, so we'll bring Kyle on now.
All right, what's up? Fix this a little bit.
What's going on, man? Good morning. Who that
I'm
morning
all
for
right.
for a change?
What's up?
I said who that morning for a change. We're getting into Saints football season. It feels good, doesn't it? There we
It,
go.
it
There we
feels
go.
great. I had to put on my
Awesome.
Drew Brees shirt, a little oversized shirt. I'm hyped. I'm hyped. I
Yeah.
just ready to see some Saints football. I didn't realize that I called it earlier on the Dome Discussions podcast. I'm hyped to see the gold jerseys. Apparently, I said the Saints are going to wear gold jerseys week one, and I matched helmets. So I seem to be the jersey expert here. So I feel good about the game. If they're going to go out and lose, which many are expecting, I'm not saying I'm one of them. At least they're going to look good and have a good, feel to do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the nice thing, like there's a lot of pressure in this season, I think. Around a couple of social media platforms, we don't have a whole lot to talk about as far as the game, so we're just going to talk about the start of the season because, we don't know who's going to have a good season week one. So yeah, I just saw the conversation of like, can Kellen Moore fail? Like what is a failure of this season? And I think the only answer that I saw I agree with is if he starts to lose guys, and we're not going to see any of that in week one. If we see him lose guys in week one, we're in trouble, right? Like that's not a good thing. So like you said, even a lot of folks expect him to lose, and I don't know how I feel. It's been tough to get a gauge on this team. So it's going to be really interesting to see week one Saints football for a change. It felt like, despite having a lot of rough seasons, we're what, like 7 wins in a row for the last seven
Yep.
seasons, but that hasn't equated to like winning seasons or
Mm-mm.
playoffs or anything like that. So I kind of went over the injury report. We talked about first game of the season vibes, but what is your expectation of this team going into week one? Do you have any expectations for them?
Yeah. So the whole thing with this season is, if the Saints are going to admit it's a rebuilding season verbally, they have shown that it's a rebuilding season. So I don't know if it's so much an expectation, but I see these guys develop. I hope to see these younger guys, these guys that you want a part of your team for the future. I want to see them play. I get some time in so we can see them play. We can see these guys develop. because at the end of the day, that's kind of what this season is going to come down to: is can you develop these guys to get them ready for a year from now, get them ready for 2 years from now. I talked about it a lot, how I think it's interesting the Saints brought a bunch of guys on for 3-year contracts. Usually 4 years contracts is kind of like where you hit, but it seems like the Saints kind of have a 3-year plan here, maybe with Tyler Shuck as well. Justin Reed's on a 3-year contract. Jawan Johnson came back on a 3-year contract. Um, it's the one slipping right. Oh, Chase Young. Chase Young's also on a 3-year contract. They did all of their contracts this year on 3-year extensions or 3-year contracts. So my expectation is they want to develop a lot of these guys, and then a year from now or even 2 years from now, they're going to be ready to compete, and that's what they're hoping. So my expectation is I just want to see all of these guys develop, get them out there early, let them get their legs under them, learn the game, learn the systems, and then a year from now or 2 years from now, you're competing.
Yeah, I'm right there with you because like I said, we don't have a whole like when it's week 4 or 5 of these pre and post game shows, we can talk about certain players, we can talk about certain matchups, but right now, I think we're trying to figure out who's on our roster more than anything. So that's going to be the interesting point. And to your point, who's going to be on the roster in 3 years? Who's going to be those corner pieces? Because I mean, you have guys that you know, by the time we become competitive, he's going to be on the end of his career, and like Alvin, and Chris Olave is going to be in that middle of his career and things like that. We know those guys are going to be there. We're not worried about what they do week one. We're worried about the names, and really the biggest thing is, do we have a franchise quarterback sitting on that sideline today at all? Whether it be maybe Tyler of the future or Rattler of the now. We don't know, but we unfortunately know it's not Hayner. As much as we all love the guy, cheered for the Saints growing up. He's cut again, so made some room for a pass rusher. I think I can't remember who they added in his place, but that's going to be the question, and that's what we're figuring out this season. It's going to be fun. I'm going to answer my own questions, expectations for the team. My expectations is just for a little while, it's going to be boring. I think, one of the phrases I picked up a long time ago was keep it simple, stupid, like, and I think that's what we're going to see a little bit. First game of the season, it's not going to be exciting, I don't think. I think the most exciting thing we might see is I'll slide into some early NFL bets, but I think that one of the most exciting things we're probably going to see is possibly a bomb to Rashid or even Cooks. Their Cooks is still a speedy guy, and we know Spencer likes to sling it. We saw that in practice, we saw that in training camp, and we saw a bit of it in the preseason. He's good at getting that ball downfield. So that's probably going to be the most exciting thing we see, and it may be like a Taysom Hill exciting thing. Like when he launches it, it's like, oh, where's it going? Like, is it going to go to the right guy? But yeah, I'm excited either way for the season, for the game. It's going to be fun. So before we jump into like the NFL and NFC South matchups this week, do you have anything else about the game players or anything for this
Yeah.
week one
So
matchup?
one of the things you brought up is, do we know if we have our quarterback of the future? Which that obviously is a big thing, but I think one thing that a lot of people look over, because it feels kind of surefire, is, do we have our head coach of the future either? You kind of brought up Kellen
True.
Moore. Is Kellen Moore? I think week one's actually a great matchup for this. Obviously, offensive guys usually seem to start slow, and it feels like it's his first time head coaching a game, things like that. But he's playing against Jonathan Gannon, a former Eagles head coach as well, who is a defensive mind. So you have Kellen Moore, an offensive mind, playing a chess match against John Gannon, I'm sorry, and the Cardinals. So I think that's another this game right here is going to be, kind of a big one for Kellen Moore to start the season, where maybe there's not a lot of repercussions. People aren't thinking you're going to win anyways. But it's to see what he can draw up to get these guys open, what kind of adjustments he can get against a defensive-minded head coach. Like I said, they were both coordinators for the Eagles on different years, obviously. But I do think this matchup for Kellen Moore is going to be pretty big off the bat, just to see how well he does in his debut for one, and against a defensive-minded head coach, where it's going to be a chess match, and you really see from start to finish how he's going to be able to adjust from what Gannon does, and vice versa.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think the big thing, is I I have always felt like the Saints, you know, it would be great for Kellen to get a win, right, for his first game. But we've always kind of struggled with uh, the running quarterbacks or just the mobile quarterbacks in general. So Kyler is just a great one to see, not only how he handles week one, but how he handles adjustments on the fly, because your game plan, snap one is not going to be your game plan snap 60, either side of the ball. So it'll be interesting to see, how he does. Like you said, I think it's we're so focused on the quarterback battle. You're right that there is, something else going on right now that, we're probably not thinking about, that we probably won't see the repercussions of until week 7, 8, or 9, if it does start to happen. But biggest thing, like I said earlier, is he just has to win the locker room over. I think that's how he has the first successful season, being that it's a rebuilding season, but it's not, as they say. But yeah, so we'll hop into the rest of the matchup here for the NFC South. So we have obviously some interdivisional rivals in the NFC South. The biggest one is typically the Falcons, and they are facing off against the Buccaneers. So not a whole lot to watch there. It's one of them's going to be 1-0, one of them's going to be 0-1 early in the season. So a little. Again, we're not talking too much about these things in depth because we don't know where they're going to be in, week 8, 9, or 10. So, and then the Panthers have the Jaguars. So, another easy one to watch. And Jaguars, I think those are almost the same teams. They seem to be at the same path in their young quarterback journey and everything like that. So that should be an interesting one to yet watch. But I'm actually interested to see Bryce Young this year because he could be almost like the I don't want to say Andy Dalton because we had him, but like the Andy Dalton right now, like he's like 2 or 3 games, you're like reminded why he's an NFL quarterback, and then 2 or 3 games, you're like, why is this guy starting in the NFL? At least when he was with us, Andy Dalton was a heck of a QB in Cincinnati, but he's obviously old now. But Bryce Young's on like the other end of that spectrum where you know, he's learning from people like exactly like Andy Dalton and things like that now. And I'm interested to see what he does this year because I think that team is going to be our biggest competition going forward. I don't have, for some odd reason, I'm not just saying this because of the Falcons. I don't have a whole lot of faith in that like core that the Falcons are building right now. It doesn't look to be a team of like long-term success. But I really think if you put a good team around Bryce, he's going to be our biggest like threat in the next 3 or 4 years when we're figuring things out ourselves as well. But any interdivisional matchups that you see that you're going to keep your eye on to see how they pan out in week one?
Yeah, actually, I'm very interested in the Falcons. Kind of to the opposite of what you said. I think it's kind of intriguing the way that they have built it, where they got their obviously a franchise running back, Bijan Robinson. Drake London has shown he had a first 1,000 yard season last year, and he's shown like he could be a big threat going forwards. Kyle Pitts is a little iffy on sometimes, but another guy that's a big play. And they kind of built their team almost the opposite of how successful teams have built their team recently. Philadelphia
Right.
Eagles trenches and then go outwards. The Falcons are going outwards in, and obviously they've had trouble protecting the quarterback, and they've had trouble getting to the quarterback on defense. So it's kind of interesting to see how they will play, considering that will they be able to protect Michael Penix, who, contrary to many people believe, he can make some plays with his legs, but that's not his game. He's going to be more of a pocket passer, get that ball out, similar to Bryce Young, and so when you're going to have a weaker offensive line that also suffered an injury earlier in the offseason, how are they going to be able to protect him? Because I think the Eagles, I'm sorry, I think the Falcons could be a good team and a great team, but the way they have built their team, where going from the outside in, isn't the way that it's worked out for most NFL teams recently. And I would be very interested to see how that looks. And I'm, just like you said, very interested in seeing how Bryce Young plays as well. Again, just another team where they haven't really been able to get it right in the trenches recently. Can't really protect Bryce Young, but they spent a lot of money on the offensive line this offseason. And then they brought in Ted McMillan, who feels like he could be a really good wide receiver in this league. A big guy that I watched that I was hoping maybe the Saints could possibly snag him if he went there. And that's just going to be another interesting team going forwards. As for the Bucks, I feel like we know what the Bucks are. I love Baker Mayfield a lot, if I'm being honest. I love Baker Mayfield as a quarterback. I love the old, bad boy gimmick that he has. It's been one of my favorites to watch. But in terms of play, he's a definitely top 15 quarterback, that's for sure. He maybe sneaks into that top 10 with production, but his ceiling isn't very high to me. And then from there, Bucky Irving is fun. They won't have Chris Godwin this week, but Mike Evans, you know what he is. He's good for 1,000 yards a season, maybe a little more, never less, apparently. But from them, you kind of know they'll win about 9 games, maybe get to the 10 mark, maybe 11, kind of pushing it there. But the NFC South, as Drew Brees actually said, feels like it still could be kind of wide open. And the Saints are like the biggest question mark. You have no idea what the Saints are. You don't know if they have a good head coach or bad head coach. You don't have to have a good quarterback, bad quarterback, or quarterback at all. So, I'm not saying I expect the Saints to compete this offseason or this season, but I think when I look at the NFC South, I still don't see any big threats. So it'll be interesting week 1 to see who does what, how they really present themselves. And again, it's kind of hard to judge teams off of week 1 anyways, but at least get a little bit of intel on how teams want to run.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, to your point about the Falcons building the opposite way of most, NFL teams that do it successfully, that's one of the biggest things I'm excited for because, the Bucks are I don't want to use the word dirty because it sounds like I'm just talking about like a rival in a bad way. But I mean, I remember when the Saints were full of veterans at Breeze's like Twilight tours, and we had guys who kind of gave like that bad boy image on defense that weren't afraid to get in their face. CD was there chomping at the bits with Brady. Like we had those guys that could get under people's skin. And I think the Bucks have that. So I think that now it's going to be interesting to see how the Falcons offensive line not only protects Penix, but keeps their stuff together. That's going to be a good test for them, and a good look for us as divisional rivals to see what are we facing. In a couple of weeks at the end of the year and things like that. Are we going to be able to take some of those wins in the division and like you said, possibly compete in the division just because it does feel like this is the season that if the Bucks miss a couple of games that they shouldn't, it's gonna be a race to, you know, 8 and 9 now, whatever it is with the extra game, like it's not gonna be a race to who has, an 11 win season. It's gonna be interesting. And it's gonna come down to divisional games, I think, but outside of the Bucks dropping a few that they shouldn't, I think the Bucks take the division, personally. But I do think there's a chance that the Bucks just have a couple of games that don't go right for them, that put them right in the mess with the rest of the NFC South. And that could be interesting because then those last, I think, when I looked at the schedule, the last couple of games of the season, it's I'm just looking at the Buccaneers schedule because that's the one I have up right now. But it's the last December 7th starts it. Saints, Falcons, Buccaneers, or Saints, Falcons, Panthers, and then they got one Dolphins game in there. So the end of the season is going to be really interesting. Like I said, if anyone drops some games that they shouldn't, like the Bucks, but. I digress. I think the rest of the NFL slate is something that I normally put on the agenda here, but there's not much to talk about, outside of maybe just exciting rookies that you want to see play today. But we don't know who's playing for a playoff spot right now. So outside of that, you have anything with like I said, maybe exciting rookie or exciting trade free agent signing that you're looking for in the rest of the NFL?
I think it's I'm just doing the popular pick that I think everybody. I just want to see what Travis Hunter does. I want to see.
Yeah.
Apparently, they said they want to see they're going to use Travis Hunter primarily as a receiver and then situational reasons on defense. But I mean, he's such an exciting player. Obviously, Ashton Junsi is another one. I don't actually have 100% who they're playing right now, but Ashton Junsi is going to be another one just because he did so well in college and people over exaggerate in preseason all the time. And they did that with him as well because I think he had negative rushing yards or very few. I will want to say one of the things that you said earlier. I'm sorry to go back a little bit. Was you talked about the Bucks dropping ones that they shouldn't. That kind of just brought something that I kind of want to rant real quick with the NFL
Mhm.
because I thought this was crazy. So I'm gonna go back to Friday's matchup between the Chiefs and the Chargers. And I would love for someone to explain to me why any divisional game is being played at a neutral site. I'm sorry. This was just because if this ever happens to the Saints and the Saints are hosting the Falcons in London or something such like that, that I think that's crazy. I just think that's crazy. Where now the Chargers are going to have to eventually travel to Kansas City and they'll never get that one up on the Chiefs. Which I mean, the Chargers still came home with the win, so it's fun with that. But I don't know. That was just one thing that I'm hoping not to see. But back to the rookies thing. I'm sorry. I just pulled up the schedule and I
No, you're
wanted
good.
to bring it. So yeah, and obviously Cam Ward as well against the Broncos defense because we know how that Broncos defense was last year. I think they led the league in sacks. Cam Ward, they've gone with a lot of first round rookies, first round talents to protect Cam Ward over the few years, and now that they have Cam Ward, you would hope that they could protect him. But I think Cam Ward's still very much a project that's going to have to develop. So facing the league leaders in sacks last year is going to be rough for him.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. That was going to be my pick, Cam Ward. I think he's, outside of all the headlines that we saw about Sanders, who, to my knowledge, isn't even starting today. It's. I wish they would have focused more on Cam Ward because, to your point, he's NFL ready, but I don't know if he's NFL season ready. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but like, he's definitely got the talent. He's definitely got the poise, but it's going to be interesting to see him this year because it just, based on preseason alone, you can't judge guys on that, right? Like, Jake Haener sometimes looks like he could lead the Saints to the promised land in the preseason when you're playing threes and fours. So that's my exciting game to watch is Cam Ward, and I will say that like I'm gonna peek in on the Browns game because I just, if it becomes like a quick Cincinnati's whooping up on them, it might be interesting to see if they say, you know what, like let's throw one of these rookies in here because you're drafted too and you're starting zero. Like it almost seems like the Browns for so long were just throwing rookie QBs into the fire, and now that they have two that looked pretty good, they're like, we're gonna wait. It's like make it make sense. But I digress on that one. I'll just be poking in on the score and seeing what that has. So we'll kind of jumping into the wrapping it up here. But one thing I like to do before we go is just give an anytime touchdown score, any side of the ball for the Saints game. I'm gonna throw mine out there. I think he's a veteran. I know. Technically, we can say Chris Olave and Rashid are veterans, but I think Brandon Cooks is gonna get a touchdown today. I feel like the way he runs routes, he's going to be almost like that tight end safety blanket for Spencer, and that's mine. So I'm going with Brandon Cooks for the anytime touchdown score. So what do you
Yeah,
got for the
I
Saints?
do actually have a bet in place already. I placed this
Okay.
last week. I'm gonna just name the parlay out real quick, right? It was my Homer Louisiana parlay. I had LSU money line against Clemson. I had Tulane money line against Northwestern. So obviously both those teams winning their week one matchup. I have the Saints winning their week one matchup, and my money line. I mean my anytime touchdown score it was one because I feel very confident in it. And I'm gonna say it's my lock is Alvin Kamara. It just feels so easy to say with the Saints offense, Kellen Moore coming in, that run heavy offense. I think Alvin Kamara gets in the if the Saints do win, which that parlay says. I think it's going to be allowed on Alvin Kamara's, and so I think Kellen Moore is going to run Alvin Kamara, use him in the red zone, something that the Saints haven't done in last couple years. Clint Kubiak did a little more than Pete Carmichael, but where I think Kellen Moore understands the value of getting your running back into the end zone, and so I thought Alvin Kamara for the anytime.
Yeah, I definitely think it seems like a lot of people, including Jameis Winston, understood the importance of getting your your trenches guys into the end zone with that late game adjustment that Jameis Winston made to get Jamal Williams his touchdown. It definitely felt weird that sometimes we'd be doing a pitch to Jamal Williams on the 5 yard line instead of AK, and then we'd send AK up the middle the next play, and just didn't make a lot of sense for the last couple of years. But no, I like AK as a pick as well. And then on the Cardinals side of the ball, again, I'm going to go something that just feels like we've had an issue with for the past decade. I think Kyler Murray is going to find himself around the 7 yard line and he's going to roll out to the left or right, and he's going to see a lane, and he's going to take it. So I typically don't think too much about the other team's anytime touchdown score, but that's one that feels, I normally go with the names, like, oh, we're playing
Hmm.
the Bucks this week. It's going to be Evans, but I just feel like Kyler Murray's going to find a way in. But you got any for the other side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, we still don't know how our safeties could play against tight ends. Trey McBride came on really big last year. He's a threat. He's also on my fantasy team. Not saying I hope for it. I'm just saying it's what it is. So, and I definitely did start him this week. Not that I would start anyone else over him, but the Saints have had trouble guarding these tight ends over the years, and now I mean, it's a whole different unit back there, like almost completely. So we don't know. It might be a little bit better, might be a little bit worse, but I think Trey McBride's going to get in there. I don't know if the Saints have the length to guard him.
Yeah, that was we're going back, and I know we're supposed to be wrapping it up here, but I do want to say that, Alante taking on the challenge of wanting to learn how to guard tight ends. A lot of times you see like bigger body safeties want to take on that role, or more
Mm-hmm.
athletic linebackers. So to see Alante want to take it on, I think is a good sign. I think, the sky is the limit for him. He's shown such great flashes in coverage, and being around the ball is the best place for him. So I think if he can pick up that tight end guarding that keeps him around the ball for run plays and things like that, or jumping other routes that are in his area. So that should be fun to watch. So maybe we'll see some don't play with Alonce action on McBride over there. So that should be fun. But we'll wrap it up. Don't forget to tune into the post game show. We will be live shortly after the game, with just immediate reaction, score breakdown, a look around the NFL again, a look at all of our divisional rivals. I do believe they all play at noon today. Panthers, yeah. So we'll know, who's 1-0 and who's 0-1. There's going to be two 1-0s for sure because the Saints are going to win, and then the Buccaneers or the Falcons have to win. But we'll see. But yeah, other than that, I'm Ethan Myers with the Know. That is Kyle with Dome Discussions podcast. They do weekly stuff, so make sure you tune in with them. They're going to be, dropping at least weekly at this point. Maybe some jump out episodes, and things like that are going to be fun, or audible episodes, whatever they may be called, nowadays. But we'll make sure to plug them as well as much as we can. And like I said, be on the lookout for what they do. Follow their Twitter. I think it's at Dome Discussions, right? There's no the
Yep.
in there
Just
for the,
that
the
dome
Twitter handle.
discussions.
Yeah, yeah. So make sure you follow them. Like I said, they're pumping out some fantastic Saints content for us, and they were starting before the season even started, which kudos to them because that takes a lot of research and effort. So keep up with them, and then like I said, join us post game for a post game breakdown. Who dat? Let's get 1-0, and let's get this thing rolling.